In the heart of a world where the tangible and the intangible intertwine, where the boundaries between reality and dreams blur, there arises a work that promises to unlock the doors of hidden knowledge. In Metaphysics for Everyone, by Conny Mendez, the reader will not only find words printed on paper, but will also discover a universe filled with mysteries and ancient wisdom. Imagine a text that is not just a text but a golden key that invites you to explore the deepest corners of your being and the universe. As you open its pages, you will be greeted by whispers of eternal truths, wrapped in a mantle of light and color that awaken the soul. This is not an ordinary journey. It is a voyage into the extraordinary, into the unknown, where each concept and teaching is revealed with the magic of the metaphysical. As you immerse yourself in these words, let your mind expand, let your heart open, and let your spirit soar. Allow Conny Mendez to guide you through this path of discovery and transformation. In her teachings, you will find not only knowledge but also the divine spark that resides within each of us, waiting to be discovered. Welcome to a world where metaphysics becomes the compass that guides your life, where every thought has the power to create realities and every feeling is a reflection of the universe. Prepare yourself for a fascinating and revealing journey where the impossible becomes possible and the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. This is your invitation to uncover the secrets that have always been within your reach, waiting to be unveiled. Chapter 1. Dynamic Christianity evokes a captivating reality. Before embarking on any profession, a candidate receives instructions, studies the required technique. However, there is another who launches into their mission blindly, without a guide or technique, without a compass, without preconceived ideas, ignorant of what awaits them. This is the human being plunged into existence, without understanding their nature, without grasping why life unfolds with opulence for some, while others endure misery and suffering. Some lives begin auspiciously, infused with love, yet are followed by series of disasters. Human beings navigate an ocean of uncertainties. Often their lives end without grasping the truth about themselves. Yet they finally discover a great truth. Your thoughts materialize. Thoughts are tangible entities. Your attitude determines everything that manifests. Your own concept is reflected not only in your being and character, but also externally, in your living conditions and material circumstances. Yes, thoughts materialize, and this is now a reality. If you maintain the idea of robust health, no matter what happens, you will remain healthy. But if you alter your thinking, overwhelmed by the fear of illness, you begin to fall ill, losing your health. If you were born into opulence, you're likely to remain wealthy, unless someone persuades you that destiny rules and you begin to believe that yours can change with the vicissitudes of fate. Because that's what you believe. Your life, what happens to you, follows your convictions and words. It's a law, a principle. You understand what a principle is, an immutable, unalterable law. This law is called the principle of mentalism. If in your mind the idea persists that accidents lurk around every corner, if you believe that the ailments of old age are inevitable, if you are convinced of your luck, good or bad, then everything you anticipate, for good or ill, is what will manifest in your life and actions. This is the reason for what happens to you every day. We are never aware of the ideas filling our minds. They form based on what we are taught or what we hear. Since almost everyone is unaware of the laws that govern life, the laws called the laws of creation, almost everyone spends their lives creating contrary conditions, seeing what was supposed to be so good turn into bad, navigating blindly without a compass, rudder or compass, attributing their woes to life itself, learning through blows and wounds, blaming the will of God, and that's how they have lived so far. With what you have read so far, you realize that the human being is not what you have been led to believe, that is, a morsel tossed about by the waves in a storm, without the power to choose. None of this. His life, his world, his circumstances, everything he is, everything that happens to him, are his own creations, and nothing else. He is the king of his empire. If his opinion is that he is just a morsel tossed about by the waves in a storm, then so it shall be. He believed it and allowed it. Being born with free will means being created with the individual right to choose, to choose to think negatively or positively, pessimistically or optimistically, to think of the ugly and the bad that produces the ugly and the bad, or to think of the good and the beautiful that produces the good and the beautiful, inside or out. Metaphysics has always taught that our thoughts often pass into our subconscious and settle there, acting as a reflection. Modern psychology has finally discovered when human beings are caught in the effects of their ignorance, that is, when they are responsible themselves for a calamity, they turn to God and beg Him to deliver them from suffering. Man sees that God sometimes hears him, and at other times, inexplicably, He does not. In the latter case, it is when his loved ones console him, telling him that he must resign himself to God's will. In other words, everyone assumes that the Creator's will is bad. At the same time, religion teaches that God is our Father, a Father full of love, kindness, mercy, and eternal wisdom. You notice the lack of harmony between these two theories. It seems sensible to you that a Father of all love and infinite wisdom could feel and express ill will towards His children. We mortal parents would never be able to impute to a child the crimes that we attribute to God. We would not be able to condemn a child to eternal fire for a natural fault of his mortal condition. And yet, we believe that God is capable of this. In other words, unwittingly, we attribute to God a nature of a capricious, vindictive magnate, full of ill will, who watches for our slightest infractions to inflict disproportionate punishments on us. It is natural to think this way because when we are born, we live in ignorance of the basic rules and laws of life. As we said, the reason for our calamities is that we create them through thought. In this, we are the image and likeness of the Creator. We are creators, each of our own manifestation. Now, why does God seem to answer sometimes and not others? You will see. Prayer is the purest and highest thought one can have. It polarizes the mind to the most positive degree. These are vibrations of light that we emit when we pray, that is, when we think of God. These vibrations must instantly transform dark conditions surrounding us into perfect and beautiful conditions, just as when one brings a lamp into a room plunged into darkness. Whenever the one who prays thinks and believes that the God to whom he asks is a loving Father who wants to give everything that is good to his child, in this case, God always responds, even though humanity generally has the habit of praying in this way. "O Father God, save me from this trial, because I know you think it is not suitable for me, because you want to subject me to this trial." In other words, all possibility of receiving has already been excluded. There is more faith in this God we have been taught, capricious, vindictive, full of ill will, ready to inflict punishments of satanic cruelty upon us, than in believing in God. The one who prays in this manner receives only according to his own concept of God. It's as simple as I'm telling you. Never forget this again. God's will for you is good, health, peace, happiness, well-being, everything good He has created. Never forget this again. God is neither the judge, nor the police officer, nor the executioner, nor the tyrant you have been led to believe. The truth is that He created 7 laws, 7 principles that operate at all times and in all places, without ever failing. These laws ensure order and harmony throughout creation. No police officer is needed in the mind. One who goes against the law punishes himself. What you think manifests. Learn to think correctly and in harmony with the law, so that all the good that God wants for you may manifest. St. Paul said that God is closer to us than our feet and hands, even more than our breath. There is no need to shout for Him to hear us. Just thinking of Him is enough to start everything to restore, even what seems unbalanced. He created us. He knows us better than we can know ourselves. He knows why we act in this or that way, and He does not expect us to behave like saints while we are still learning to walk in this spiritual life. I beg you not to believe what I tell you without first verifying it. It is your divine and sovereign right. Do not do as you have done so far, accepting everything you hear and see without giving yourself the chance to judge between good and evil. Chapter 2. The Mechanics of Thought. Throughout the day and night, we think of countless different things. A kind of film continues to play in our minds, although disconnected. Among all these different ideas, we stop to contemplate, examine, or study some more than others. Why? Because they have stimulated our feelings, made us feel fear, antipathy, sympathy, compassion, satisfaction, or discontent. It doesn't matter. The fact is that because of these feelings, the idea interests us. We think about it later, and perhaps even discuss it with someone. This is called meditation, and what is meditated upon in this way penetrates the subconscious and registers there. Once an idea is recorded in the subconscious, it becomes a reflex. You know that when the doctor taps your kneecap, your leg jerks. He touched a sensitive spot, and that's why you reacted that way. Similarly, whenever an event in your life is connected to one of the ideas recorded in your subconscious, the reflex reacts in the same way as when the idea was recorded. You adopt an attitude consistent with the original feeling you had when you first thought of that idea. Metaphysicians call this a concept, that is, a belief, a conviction. The subconscious does not discern, make decisions, express opinions, think for itself, protest, or have its own will. These are not its functions. Its only function is to react by making available the reflex that was given to it. In this sense, it is a wonderful filing cabinet secretary or automatic librarian that never rests and never makes mistakes. It also has no sense of humor. It does not know if an order was given as a joke or seriously. Therefore, if your nose is a bit prominent and to make others laugh, you jokingly call it a potato nose, for example, the subconscious, as a precise servant devoid of a sense of humor, will strive to follow the command you gave it with your words and feelings. So you will see how your nose will begin to resemble more and more a stuffed potato. The word metaphysics means beyond the physical, that is, the science that studies and deals with everything invisible to the physical senses. It gives us the reason for everything we do not understand, for everything that is mysterious and lacks a clear and precise explanation, as you will see when reading this book. Now, do you remember the first time you heard the word cold? You don't remember, right? You were very young. Adults told you this word and taught you to fear it. By repeating it many times, they taught you to understand it. They told you not to get your feet wet, not to expose yourself to drafts, not to get close to someone who had a cold because you could catch it, etc. All of this was recorded in your subconscious, thus creating a reflex. Chapter 3. The Infallible Formula. We have agreed that every human mind contains an accumulation of opinions, beliefs, or erroneous concepts, contrary to truth and in conflict with the fundamental principles of creation. These erroneous ideas continually manifest through external conditions, causing all these calamities and sufferings that affect human beings and the world in general. Diseases, accidents, sufferings, conflicts, disharmonies, shortages, failures, and even death. Fortunately, none of this corresponds to the truth of being. Fortunately, there is a way to erase all these erroneous beliefs and replace them with correct beliefs that not only create positive, good, happy, and correct conditions and circumstances, but once the error is corrected and the truth established in the subconscious, they can never again be reproduced in our lives. The order has been changed and the magnetic pole has shifted. It is absolutely impossible to attract something that does not already have its correspondence within us. The infallible formula is as follows. Every time something unpleasant happens to you, whether you fall ill, have an accident, are robbed, offended, disturbed, or cause harm to others or yourself, if you are afflicted by a physical, moral, or character defect, if someone displeases you, if you hate them or love them too much and suffer for it, if you are tormented by jealousy, if you fall in love with someone who belongs to another, if you are a victim of injustice or under the yoke of someone else, the list is endless. Then replace the condition affecting you with, I know the truth. As Jesus Christ, the greatest of all metaphysical teachers, said, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Gospel of John 8:32. The truth, the supreme law, is perfection, beauty, justice, freedom, health, intelligence, wisdom, and love. Anything opposed to this perfection is an illusion because it contradicts the supreme law of harmonious perfection. Therefore, it is a lie because it goes against the truth. Your higher self is already perfect at this moment. It has always been perfect and cannot fall ill, age, suffer, fear, sin, or struggle. It is beauty, love, intelligence, wisdom, and joy. This is the truth. Your truth, my truth, the truth of all human beings. No matter what you manifest, what happens to you that is contrary to harmonious perfection, or what you inflict upon yourself or others, all of this stems from a mistaken belief that you have created. Remember this first, then say mentally or aloud as you prefer, I do not accept this. Say it firmly but with infinite gentleness. Mental work does not require physical strength. Neither thought nor mind has muscles. When you say, I do not accept this, do it as if you were saying, I do not want this calmly, but with the same conviction and firmness, without shouting, without violence, without sudden gestures. Make yourself understood after saying, I do not accept this. Remember that your higher self is perfect, and its conditions are perfect now. Then say, I declare that the truth of this problem is harmony, love, intelligence, justice, abundance, life, health, etc., no matter what opposes the negative condition manifesting at that moment. Thank you, Father, for hearing me. You do not need to blindly believe what you read. You must verify it for yourself. In metaphysical terminology, this is called a treatment. After any treatment, you must maintain the attitude you have declared. You cannot allow doubt about the effectiveness of the treatment to settle in, nor can you express again through words the previous concepts, opinions, and beliefs, as this cancels out the treatment. The objective is to transform the mental model that has prevailed in the subconscious, that is the mental climate in which you have lived, with all its series of negative circumstances. As St. Paul said, be transformed by the renewal of your mind in Romans 12:2. This renewal occurs by changing each old belief as it presents itself in your life or consciousness, in alignment with the truth. There are convictions so deeply ingrained that they are called, in metaphysical terminology, crystallizations. They require more work than others, but every denial and affirmation concerning these crystallizations gradually erases the initial pattern until it completely disappears. Only the truth remains. Understand that you have no defects, only appearances of defects. What you perceive as moral or physical defects is temporary. By understanding the truth of your true self, your Christ, your higher self, which is perfect as a child of God and made in His image, the imperfections you display to the world diminish. This is a verifiable fact that every student of Christian metaphysics can confirm. This is the great truth, never forget it. Begin to practice it now, for the more you practice it, the more it will manifest, the more you will progress, and the more you will experience happiness. Remember that you are unique, like your fingerprints. You were created with a unique design and a special purpose that no one else but you can fulfill. You have evolved over 14,000 years to arrive where you are today. The expressions of God are infinite. You and I are just two of these infinite expressions. Your Christ is an intelligent being who loves you passionately and has been waiting for centuries for you to recognize Him. The time has come to speak to Him, to ask Him questions and to await His answers. He is your guide and your soul master. When you understand, accept, and live this truth, it will be the birth of Christ within you. This is what is prophesied for this era. It is not that Jesus is reborn, but that each person will find Christ in their conscience and heart, as happened to Jesus. That is why He was called Jesus Christ. Chapter 4. The Decree. Every spoken word is a decree that manifests outwardly. Speech is expressed thought. Jesus said two things that were not taken seriously. The first is, by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This does not mean that others will judge us by what we say, although that is true, as you have already observed. The Master taught metaphysics, but the race was not yet mature enough to understand it. He warned several times that he still had much to say, but it could not be understood. At other times he said that it is not what enters the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out, because what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart and makes the person impure, in other words, impure. You cannot have service, do not leave it there, because thieves will steal it from you. They attack on every street corner. I'm afraid to go out. Be careful not to fall. Be careful not to kill yourself. You will break it. I'm so unlucky I can't eat that, it hurts me. My bad memory, my joy, my migraine, my rheumatism, my poor digestion. It's a bandit, it's a sad one. Do not be surprised or complain if by expressing it you see it come true. Because you ordered it yourself, you gave an order that must be executed. Now, remember and never forget that every word you speak is a decree, whether positive or negative. If it's positive, it will manifest well. If it's negative, it will manifest poorly. And if it's directed against others, it's as if you decree it against yourself. It will come back to you. If you are kind and understanding towards others, you will receive kindness and understanding from others towards you. And when something unpleasant, negative, or annoying happens to you, do not say, "I never thought this would happen to me." You must have the honesty and the discomfort to reflect on how you referred to your fellow human beings. At what moment an old concept rooted in your heart emerged, which may be just a social custom, like most of those mentioned above, and that you really do not want to continue to use. The feeling that accompanies the thought is what is most firmly rooted in the subconscious. Master Jesus, who never used unnecessary words, wisely expressed that from the mouth comes out of the heart. This statement gives us a clear indication revealing that the first emotion we learn is fear, taught first by our parents, then by our religious teachers. When we feel fear, our heart beats faster. We often say, "My heart is about to come out of my mouth," to show the degree of fear we feel at a given time. Fear is behind all the negative phrases I mentioned earlier. St. Paul said that we are transformed by the renewal of our mind. When you utter a negative phrase, you can identify the wrong concept that is rooted in your subconscious, and thus know the feelings associated with fear or lack of love. Confront this thought, reject it as a lie, and affirm the truth if you do not want to continue to manifest it in your external reality. Shortly after practicing this, you will notice that your speech is different and that your way of thinking has changed. You and your life will be transformed by the renewal of your mind. When you are in the company of others, you will become perfectly aware of the concepts they hold, and you will see these concepts manifest in everything that happens to them. Every time you hear negative conversations, do not affirm anything they say. Think, "I do not accept this for myself or for them." You don't need to tell them. It's better not to disclose the truth you are learning, not because you should hide it, but because there is an occult principle that says when the disciple is ready, the master appears. By the law of attraction, whoever is ready to rise is automatically brought closer to the one who can help them progress. So do not strive to play the role of a catechist. Do not force anyone to receive lessons on truth, as you may find that those you believe to be the most willing are actually the least sympathetic. This is what Jesus referred to when he said, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, neither cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn and tear you to pieces." Chapter 5. The mountains, because everyone knows the saying and often repeats it like a parrot without really understanding what it means, or why or how faith moves mountains. Few people know that fear can also move mountains. In reality, fear and faith are one and the same force. Fear is negative, meaning the conviction that something bad will happen. Faith, on the other hand, is the conviction that what will happen is good or will end well. Fear and faith are two sides of the same coin. Notice that you never fear that something good will happen to you, nor do you ever say that you have faith that something bad will happen to you. Faith is always associated with something we wish for, and I do not believe you wish harm upon yourself, do you? Everything you fear, you attract, and it happens to you. And when it happens, you generally say triumphantly, "I knew it, I sensed it." Then you run to tell and repeat it to show off your clairvoyant talents, when in reality you thought it with fear. Of course, you anticipated it, and you waited for it. Anticipating and waiting is having faith. So notice that everything you wait for with faith reaches you or happens. So if you know it's like this, what's stopping you from using faith for everything you desire, like love, money, health, etc.? It's a natural law, a divine decree. Christ taught it with the words you know. Everything you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. I didn't invent it. It's in chapter 21, verse 22 of the Gospel according to Matthew, and St. Mark expresses it even more clearly. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. St. Paul says it in a way that cannot be interpreted otherwise. Faith is the assurance of what we hope for, the conviction of what we do not see. Earlier, I told you that faith is the conviction of good. Now, I will tell you that conviction comes through knowledge. Suppose you live in a province and have never been to the capital. You want to go there, so you take the train, car, or plane. You know where the capital is and how to get there. One day, you head towards the capital using the transportation that suits you best. Along the way, you don't fear deviating to the moon. If you were a wild native, you would probably be terrified because you have no idea what's going on. But as a civilized person, you calmly go knowing that at such and such a time you will arrive at the capital. What gives you this faith? It's knowledge. Ignorance of the principles of creation is what makes the world fear evil and not know how to use faith or what it really is. Faith is certainty and security, but it must rest on knowledge of something. You know the capital exists and you're heading towards it. That's why you know you won't end up on the moon. Now, you know that when you want something and fear you won't get it, you won't get it. If you deny it before receiving it, like in the example of the prayer most humans address to God, saying, "My God, grant me this, although I know you won't give it to me because you think it's not good for me," then you won't get it because you've already denied it. You admitted you don't expect it. Let me give you the metaphysical formula to obtain everything you desire. It's a formula you must use for everything. Check it out for yourself and don't believe me blindly. I want this thing, in harmony for everyone and according to divine will, under grace and in a perfect way. Thank you, Father. I know you have heard me. Do not doubt for a single moment. Faith is always associated with something we wish for, and I believe you do not wish harm for yourself, do you? Everything you fear, you attract, and it happens to you. And when it happens, you generally say triumphantly, "I knew it, I sensed it." Then you rush to tell and repeat it to showcase your clairvoyant talents, when in reality, you thought of it with fear. Of course, you anticipated it and waited for it. Anticipating and waiting is having faith. So notice that everything you wait for with faith reaches you or occurs. So if you know this to be true, what stops you from using faith for everything you desire, like love, money, health, etc.? It's a natural law, a divine decree. Christ taught it with the words you know. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. I didn't invent it. It's in chapter 21, verse 22 of the Gospel according to Matthew, and St. Mark expresses it even more clearly. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. St. Paul says it in a way that cannot be interpreted otherwise. Faith is the assurance of what we hope for, the conviction of what we do not see. Earlier, I told you that faith is the conviction of good. Now, I will tell you that conviction comes through knowledge. Suppose you live in a province and have never been to the capital. You want to go there, so you take the train, car, or plane. You know where the capital is and how to get there. One day you head towards the capital using the transportation that suits you best. Along the way you don't fear veering off to the moon. If you were a wild native, you would probably be terrified because you have no idea what's going on. But as a civilized person, you calmly go, knowing that at such and such a time you will arrive at the capital. What gives you this faith? It's knowledge. Ignorance of the principles of creation is what makes the world fear evil and not know how to use faith or what it really is. Faith is certainty and security, but they must be based on knowledge of something. You know the capital exists and you're heading towards it. That's why you know you won't end up on the moon. Now you know that when you want something and fear you won't get it, you won't get it. If you deny it before receiving it, as in the example of the prayer most humans address to God, saying, "My God, grant me this, although I know you won't give it to me because you think it's not good for me," then you won't get it because you've already denied it. You admitted you don't expect it. Allow me to give you the metaphysical formula to obtain everything you desire. It's a formula you must use for everything. Test it for yourself and don't blindly believe me. I desire such a thing, in harmony for everyone and according to divine will, under grace and in a perfect manner. Thank you, Father, I know you have heard me. Do not doubt for a single moment. The small void created must be immediately filled with a contrary idea. Otherwise, the void will attract ideas of the same nature that always float in the atmosphere conceived by others. Gradually, you will see that your fears disappear if you have the will to be consistent in repeating the formula in all circumstances that arise. Gradually, you will see that only things will happen as you desire, for by their fruits you will know them, Jesus said of this powerful instrument, the power of decree. This power draws our attention in this extraordinary story of creation found in the first 2 chapters of the Genesis in the Bible. I suggest you take the time to read this wonderful story now. By reading it, you will realize that the human being, that is, you and I, was not designed to be a piece on the chessboard of circumstances, nor a victim of conditions, nor a puppet manipulated from all sides by powers beyond its control. Instead, we find that man occupies the top of creation, and far from being the most insignificant creature in the universe he is, by the very nature of the powers given to him by his Creator, the supreme authority designated by God to govern the earth and all things created. Man is endowed with the same powers as the Creator, for he is made in his image and likeness. Man is the instrument through which the wisdom, love, life and power of the Creator are fully expressed. God has placed man in a receptive and obedient universe, including his body, affairs, and environment, which have no choice but to implement the edicts or decrees of his supreme authority. The power to decree is absolute in man, a power bestowed upon him by God, and one that cannot be taken away. And although the fundamental nature of the universe is good, in the evaluation of the Creator, it can appear before man only as what he decrees. We see that as long as man was obedient to his Creator, he retained his power to think and decree in accordance with the spirit of good, which is the structure of creation. He lived in a universe of good, a paradise. However, when man fell by eating from the tree of knowledge and using his powers for both good and evil, something he could do as a free agent, he immediately found sweat and thorns mixed with his daily bread. Since the fall, man has been occupied with declaring whether his world is good or bad, and his experiences have aligned with his secret beliefs. This clearly demonstrates how the universe reacts and how complete and extensive man's power and authority are. Chapter 6. Love is the final chapter to fully understand the first principle of creation, the principle of mentalism, whose motto is, "Everything is mental." Jesus Christ said, "You are gods," Gospel of John 10:34, just as all creation is a manifested thought. Thus man, who is a god in potential, creates by thought everything he sees manifested in the image and likeness of his Creator. You have already learned the mechanics of this mental creation, that is, the positive or negative nature of what is created, the force, faith, fear that determines the character, as well as how to change the outward appearance of what you have created by denying and affirming the power of the word, which is expressed thought and thus confirms the orders you have given through your thoughts. Finally, you have learned the infallible formula for creating, manifesting, and obtaining the best, the highest, and the perfect by knowing the truth according to the commandment of Master Jesus. You know that this truth is that we have been created by a perfect Creator with his perfect essence within us, endowed with free will to create positively or negatively. Therefore, evil is not a creation of God and has no power before the truth. It disappears when you replace it with positive thought and word. Jesus said, "Do not resist evil," Matthew 5:39, which means that we must overcome evil with good. The only truth is goodness. Now, you can no longer blame anyone for what happens to you. You must look at yourself and ask, what was my state of mind in this situation? Was it positive or negative? Did I feel fear, anxiety? What kind of decree did I issue with my words? By their fruits you will know them. You must be sincere and answer truthfully. Are you satisfied with what you see? In Christian metaphysics, we say that God has 7 aspects: love, truth, life, intelligence, soul, spirit, and principle. As you can see, all these aspects are invisible mental states. We cannot see or touch them. We only feel their effects. They exist, they act, they are real, not abstractions. Love is the first aspect of God, the most powerful force of all, but also the most sensitive. Few people truly know what love is. Most think it concerns parents, children, spouses, lovers, etc. Affection, attachment, attraction, antipathy, and hatred are all different degrees of the same thing, feeling. Love is very complex and cannot be defined in a single word. On our planet, love is generally understood as a feeling, even if it is only a small part of what love truly is. To begin to understand it, the central point on the scale from hate to the feeling we call love is tolerance and goodwill. This may seem contradictory, but when there is too much love, tolerance and goodwill are lacking, just as when there is hatred. Too much love or too much hate means the negation of tolerance and goodwill. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," implying that excess does not bring peace. Peace lies in perfect balance, neither too much nor too little. In all things, including excesses of good, money, love, charity, prayer, sacrifice, they unbalance the scale and move away from peace. When Genesis says that man can eat of all the fruits of paradise except the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it refers precisely to extremes, to excess. God, who created everything, declared everything good. Read this in Genesis. It mentions evil only in relation to excess. To understand more, I recommend reading and meditating on the chapter of Ecclesiastes that begins with, "To everything there is a season," because it explains how everything has an appropriate time. Ultimately, everything God does is eternal, without addition or subtraction. Returning to love, these mothers who claim to love their children so much that they do not allow them to leave the nest, marry or act independently when they are adults, do not act out of love, but selfishness. What they feel is the desire for possession. These fiancés and wives who suffer from the torture of jealousy do not love either. This kind of love is nothing but an excess of feeling exceeding the measure, and thus moving away from tolerance and goodwill. In general, an excess of sentiment shows a lack of development of intelligence. This will certainly provoke indignation among those who boast of being highly sentimental, as no one likes their lack of intelligence revealed. However, you can verify this. Excessive emotiveness, like any excess, is harmful and indicates a lack of balance. For example, excessive heat is balanced by an equal amount of cold to make it bearable or unpleasant. Intelligence is cold while emotion is warm. Having a great emotional capacity is a wonderful and highly desirable quality, provided it is balanced by an equivalent intellectual capacity. This is what creates great artists. But the artist has their art in which they can pour all their emotional power. On the other hand, the excessively emotional person with little intellectual development pours all their passion onto the people around them, seeking to bind them and impose their will. The remedy for excessive emotiveness is to think and reflect deeply. Above all, meditate on intelligence. Begin by asking yourself what intelligence is, then reflect on the fact that everything in the universe contains intelligence, from plants to animals, etc. Conclude by affirming, "I am intelligent, with the intelligence of God Himself, for I am created from the very essence of the Creator, with His intelligence." After just a few days of repeating this treatment, you will notice a change in your mindset and a transformation in how you love others. You will develop a serenity and generosity that you never thought possible. At the same time, you will observe a total change in others' attitudes towards you, as we are all individuals, indivisible, and what affects you affects everyone else. The level you ascend helps all of humanity. Now let's talk about humanity's number one enemy: resentment and grudge, not to mention hatred. Few individuals are exempt from resentment without realizing that it poisons their existence, has a negative impact on all their manifestations, and is the cause of all disappointments we experience, even when we learn to practice denial and affirmation, to know the truth, to monitor and correct our thoughts and words. One single resentment, one single grudge recorded in the subconscious, and soul acts like a small ice source, emitting its drop of bitterness, spoiling everything, thwarting our greatest desires. Nothing, Not even the most perfect demonstration can last as long as this source of infection remains, spoiling our very being. The Bible, churches, and religions advocate forgiveness and love towards enemies, but all this is in vain unless they teach the practical way to impose forgiveness towards those who hurt us. Many say, "I forgive, but I can't forget." This is a lie, because as long as you remember a hurt, you haven't forgiven it. Here is the infallible formula for forgiving and forgetting at the same time, for our own good, because it places us at the center of balance, tolerance, and goodwill. This act is love, and the Apostle John, the Apostle of Love, says, "Love fulfills the law." Fulfilling the law of love is fulfilling all laws, being with God, in God, being happy, satisfied, and complete in all our manifestations. My master used to say, "The man who truly loves is the most powerful man in the world." Here is the recipe for truly loving. Whenever you feel something unpleasant towards someone, whether it be resentment or a desire for vengeance, deliberately try to remember all the good you know about that person. Try to relive the pleasant moments you shared in their company in the past, before they hurt you. Insist on remembering the positive aspects, their good qualities, how you used to think of them. If you manage to laugh at a joke they made or at a funny situation you shared, the miracle is accomplished. If not, repeat the treatment. Repeat it as many times as necessary to erase the resentment or grudge. This is something you should do up to 70 times 7. That is, in keeping with the law given by Jesus. Do not resist evil. It is about turning the other cheek, loving your enemies, blessing those who curse you, doing good to those who hate you, and praying for those who offend and persecute you, without exposing yourself to be trampled upon. If you do this sincerely, you will notice something strange. First, you will feel liberated, then a mountain of small troubles that were happening to you, and that you did not know how to explain, will disappear as if by magic. Your life will follow its course harmoniously, in addition to being loved by everyone, even by those who did not appreciate you before. Regarding denials and affirmations in the face of illness, whether it's your own or someone else's, I deny the appearance of any physical affliction. I do not accept it for myself or for anyone else. The only truth resides in the mind, and everything inferior adjusts to my word. By acknowledging the truth in the name of Jesus Christ, who has authorized us, I decree that myself and everyone else are life. Life is synonymous with health, strength, and joy. Thank you, Father, for hearing me. In the face of any fear, whether personal or for others, I deny fear. God did not create fear, so it only exists to the extent I allow it, and I neither accept nor desire this appearance created by me. I release and let go of any shadow of fear in myself or in you. The Apostle John said, "Perfect love casts out fear." God is love, and I am his child, made of love. This is the truth. Thank you, Father. In the face of any sadness, whether personal or for others, I deny the very existence of that sadness, pain, or depression. God does not authorize it. I remove any tendency towards negativity within me. I do not need it, and I do not accept it. God is bliss, joy, and rejoicing, and I am bliss, joy, and rejoicing. Thank you, Father. In the face of any weakness or lack, I deny any appearance of lack. This is not the truth. I cannot accept it, and I do not want it. Abundance of everything is the truth. My world contains everything. All has been provided by a Father of all love. I simply claim what is rightfully mine. Show me the way, Father. Speak, for your Son listens. Thank you, Father. In the face of anything disharmonious, I deny disharmony. I do not accept this appearance of conflict. God is perfect harmony in spirit. There is no collision, contradiction, struggle, or anything opposing the fulfillment of perfect harmony. Thank you, Father. I bless your harmony in this circumstance and for peace in the world. In the face of any contrary appearance, thank you, Father, who is peace. Thank you, Father, for anything going against this reality has no substance. All is created by those who are ignorant. I forgive those who do not know what they do. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you, Father. Everything I have just said is for you to learn to formulate your own prayers. Throughout the day, we think and decree, which is essentially praying, whether negatively or positively. We are constantly creating our own conditions, states, and events. The key is to maintain the mindset expressed in prayer. If, after affirming, you return to your negative pole, you destroy the prayer's effect. Be mindful of your thoughts and words, and do not let others influence you. Remember, they are unaware of what you are beginning to understand. What you think and ask for yourself, think also for others. We are all one in spirit, and this is the most effective way to give, better than bread and charity. For bread and charity last only a few moments, whereas truth remains with the other forever. Sooner or later, your spiritual gift will penetrate the conscious mind of the other, and you will have accomplished a work of salvation for your brother. This is the principle of rhythm, the law of the pendulum. The boomerang returns to you the good you do, just as the evil you do. It is said that whoever is with God is in the majority. Thus, a single person who elevates their consciousness to the spiritual plane and recognizes the truth as described above can save an organization from ruin, just as they can save a community, a city, or a nation from crisis. For they operate on the spiritual plane, which is truth and dominates all lower planes. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Moses was a great enlightened being, a profound teacher of metaphysical truth, who not only liberated the Hebrew people from slavery and subhuman conditions, but also taught many wandering tribes who joined his group in the desert. This is why so many different races, originating from these tribes, adopted monotheistic worship of one God and have preserved it to this day. This diversity of peoples, some entirely primitive and others more advanced, led Moses to formulate a simple and concise code of laws adapted to the mental level of all, expressed in an almost childlike language, but with severe punishments for every offense based on threat and terror, as this was the only way to tame a wild beast. Moses had been educated in the temple of Heliopolis, which was somewhat of a university. There, he taught what they called geometry at the time. This ancient wisdom encompassed not only mathematics, but also metaphysics, astrology, numerology, the interpretation of numbers, and a triple symbolism used by the ancients to preserve their knowledge for future generations as they evolved. The first aspect of this symbolism was simple, referring to life and the world of humans. The second aspect was metaphysical, dealing with the same condition but on the mental plane. The third aspect was hieroglyphic, addressing the same subject on the spiritual plane, and this latter aspect is so profound that it claims to be intelligible only to pure spirits. And here we have our first exposition of the principle of correspondence, which states, "As above, so below, as below, so above." Below refers to the material plane, human conditions, visibility, while above refers to invisibility, the mental, and of course the abstract spiritual. What the principle of correspondence says is that laws operate on all planes, and conditions on one plane are mirrored on the higher plane as well as the lower plane. Thus Moses elaborated his 10 commandments called Oseka in the Hebrew language, so that humanity, as it evolved and awakened, could be initiated into higher teachings. This interpretation is not an invention of man. It has been left in plain sight by the highly advanced but hidden through the millennia, as you will soon see. Humanity has already learned the first lesson, namely to obey the law in its initial aspect. Most people are now mentally and morally mature adults. Much of humanity already feels contradictions between dogma and common sense, indicating the time to take a step forward as the majority begins to reason at a higher level. In summary, the 10 Commandments say this: "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet." This group of laws divides into 2 groups. 8 of the commandments appear to be prohibitions and begin with the word, "You shall not." These are numbers 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Numbers 4 and 5 are recommendations at first glance. Human beings who have not yet learned to reason on the mental and spiritual plane understand them as prohibitions or standards of conduct. This was necessary so that the vast majority of humanity could receive the message and become accustomed to not killing, stealing, lying, coveting, thinking of others, and the idea of one God. In Moses' time, the world population was relatively small and limited to a small part of the earth. However, in this small region and small number, the vast majority were completely ignorant, and the rest were less ignorant. But only a few were truly advanced or educated. The great human mass of today has had to undergo great blows and individual and collective shocks to learn to behave according to the ethical rules established by Moses. But even if this does not seem to be the case at first glance, it is not true. The truth is that the vast majority desires the freedom to worship the one God in their own way. The vast majority no longer steals, no longer kills. The vast majority loves and cares for their elders. And finally, the whole earth knows and follows the recommendation to take a day of rest each week, Sunday. The minority is the one that breaks earthly laws. A very small minority lives in prison. A minority ignores God. If human beings still ignore the existence of the law to punish those who misbehave, they are the exception that confirms the advancement of the majority. The time has come for the vast majority of humanity to take the next step forward. That is, to receive and understand the second aspect of the previously mentioned symbolic trilogy, which deals with the mental plane. The third aspect, the hieroglyph, will not be understood until we are rid of all error. This will only be intelligible to pure spirits, that is, when we have learned to love one another. To summarize, the first 3 commandments lay out the principle of mentalism, which we will not reveal immediately, but only at the end, after exposing what the commandments numbers 6, 8, 9, and 10 contain, namely, do not kill, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not covet. To begin to clarify, the word do not does not carry the same intent as those signs found in certain parts of cities saying, do not litter, keep off the grass. These are actions that citizens may commit but should not, and that is how authority commands them. The do not in the commandments means you cannot even if you try, because it is futile and absurd to believe you can do it, for you will not succeed. Its principle governs all universes and all planes, whether to reward good or punish evil. It is not in vain that it is said that order is the first law of heaven, and Jesus said, even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Now you will better understand what was said regarding the fact that no evil can come from outside toward you. No one can harm you if in your memory it does not appear that you have harmed someone else in a similar way. No one can kill you, your reputation, your business, your happiness, your home, or any other possession you have. Similarly, you cannot destroy any of these in someone else. There are no accidents or coincidences. The great laws protect you. The vast majority feels incapable of killing others. That is already a lot. But now comes the second aspect of the commandment, which tells us that it is futile to try to harm others or their property through slander, gossip, lies, or deceit, because all one achieves this way is the law returning the evil in the same manner to the one who tries it. The boomerang inevitably returns to the point where it was thrown. Regarding the act of taking the life of an insect or animal, common sense is how divine wisdom expresses itself through man. Learn this maxim by heart, repeat it, and remember it whenever faced with a doubtful situation. Stop now and repeat it until it is engraved in your memory. We are the elder brothers of every manifestation of life lower than ours. Life is a single entity expressing itself through all it can animate. Insects, birds, and other animals are humans in the making. They are in the early stages of their evolution and, over many millennia, accumulate substance, materials, experience, and practice, moving from one kingdom to another. Eventually, they will succeed in materializing all this in the form of a human being. There is rarely a going back, meaning one can stagnate, slow down, deviate, or choose a different path. But the example of never going back is given by our Earth. It never retraces its steps. It took millions of years to transform from a nebula into a planet, then to produce living beings. The day never returns from 7 p.m. to midnight. Man cannot destroy his essence to be reborn as an animal. Taking all this into account, observing a small living animal, we should feel deep compassion considering the efforts it makes and the cost it pays to learn to move, adapt, and evolve in its small, one-dimensional world. By crushing it underfoot, you abruptly end its precious learning. You will better understand this by studying the principle of vibration. However, divine wisdom through common sense makes us judges, even as elder brothers. Suppose one day in our own clean and orderly house a cockroach or insect appears. "I've had enough of seeing you jumping with a shoe in hand," you might say. The poor thing has grown. However, you should not allow these animals to remain even a second longer under your own roof. As an elder brother, you have the duty to monitor, teach, correct, and guide your younger siblings. You cannot allow them to multiply unduly or enter a place that does not belong to them. Nor should you allow anyone, even an irrational animal, to exploit you. If you allow it, you are doing harm. That's why Moses said in Genesis, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Notice that this is said 3 times. When the Bible repeats a phrase 3 times, it means that the phrase has the same meaning on all 3 planes. In other words, there is no need to search for a metaphysical or hieroglyphic interpretation, as it expresses an eternal and fundamental truth. Now, animals or irrational beings do not have an individual spirit. Let's say they have a group spirit. This means that the entirety of each species forms a spirit, or perhaps it's just a particle of a spirit. I cannot know. I have not reached those heights. What is certain is that irrational beings act as a group and follow predetermined lines of action. An example of this is bees. One type of bee obeys the instinct to build wax combs, another obeys the instinct to serve the queen, and so on. These are automatic actions. Individually, they do not reflect. It is the collective that forms a spirit and guides them through instinct. Using the law of correspondence, we can see how this mechanical action of bees corresponds to a similar situation in the human realm. For example, in the construction of a building, there are water carriers, masons laying bricks, carpenters making doors, workers specializing in moldings, painting, decorations, and each works almost mechanically in their designated line, all achieving something that is in the mind of the architect. In humans, the feet correspond to the automatic work of walking, the hands to handling, the eyes to vision, the ears to listening, etc., and all obey the impulse sent by the mind through what we call nerves. Knowing this, when you encounter an insect out of its place, restrain your initial instinct to destroy it. The spirit of its group is at your mental level and is part of the universal spirit. You can contact it simply by directing your mind towards it. Just say to it, "There is a cell of you that is out of its environment. This is not harmonious with my environment. God is perfect harmony. Take it away." You will feel a great emotion as you see the insect stop still, as if receiving the wave, and after a minute, it will leave and not return. If your own consciousness is not yet sure of the truth I have taught you, if you have doubts about the outcome, or if you handle it too forcefully and find that the animal continues to bother you, give it 3 chances. Say to the group spirit, "If you do not leave soon, I will have to kill it." Generally, you will not need to kill it. In very rare cases, it may resist leaving, but only when it seeks death itself because it has already lived its life. In that case, when your common sense, which is divine wisdom within you, tells you so, you may kill it swiftly and cleanly without causing suffering or pain. Tell it to evolve into a better species. It all depends on the intention and thought with which the action is performed. There are sects and orders known as esoteric that do not eat meat. They claim that the vibrations of pain from a slaughtered animal contaminate the human soul, and they also claim that vibrations from lower species degrade the being. Master Jesus denied this belief when he said, "It is not what enters into the mouth that defiles the man, but what proceeds out of the mouth, this defiles the man. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, slanders." You have already learned the explanation of this lesson in the chapter on the decree, and according to Moses, we repeat that no one or nothing can harm us from outside, unless we deserve it, unless we accept it believing it is possible. But when we know this truth and always remember it, nothing and no one can harm us. The taste for meat or the need for meat as food simply means that the individual still retains a part of their animal nature, a carnivorous nature, so to speak. They have not yet reached the point where their cells are capable of foregoing external nourishment. That's all, because strictly limiting oneself to eating fruits and vegetables is not proof of spiritual elevation, as cows and horses only feed on grass and grains, nothing more. From the beginning of the study of metaphysics, the body's cells begin to purify because one starts living in a mental and spiritual world, according to the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above. The entire being evolves simultaneously. The student realizes sooner or later that they are beginning to no longer need meat as food, and may even come to detest it without anyone or anything forcing them to do so. Something very important when you study the principle of vibration is that you can verify the scientific truth that it is impossible for a lower frequency vibration to dominate a higher frequency one. Animals vibrate on a plane lower than that of humans. How could they ever affect it? Only in one condition: that humans ignore the principle of vibration and believe they can be affected by animal vibrations. If they believe it, they accept it and therefore submit to a law lower than their own. For this reason, life cannot be killed. Life is positive. Death is negative, that is, the negation of life. Life is indestructible. You cannot kill it, no matter how much you try. Chapter 8. You shall not steal. And you know the second metaphysical or higher aspect of this commandment. You shall never steal, not even attempt it. It is impossible. No one can take something that belongs to you. They may try, they may succeed in taking an object from you or your home, as long as you ignore the law and consequently believe that you can be stolen from. The object may be lost to you, but once you know the law, remember it and repeat its truth, you will never be stolen from again, and nothing can be lost or disappear. Verify it for yourself. Do not blindly believe it until you have verified it. The next time you do not find something you think is lost, it is one of the easiest lessons to learn. Your body today contains all the primal substances of our planet Earth, water, air, and in addition to that, it contains all the substances, all the elements you have accumulated from experiences and knowledge over thousands and thousands of years living in one form or another. But the first thing you learned is to eat and seek food. When you were a larva in the water, after going through many paths, you ended up moving your little legs to walk on Earth. Eating, digesting, and moving your limbs became acquired rights. You never could and never will be able to lose these skills that you have acquired. Every knowledge or skill that you acquire automatically gives you the right to occupy a more advanced position than the previous one. Now you understand why you cannot regress to a lower stage, because it is the law of evolution, in addition to the law of attraction, which makes everything attract its like and reject its opposite. This is part of the principle of polarity, which is unshakable, just like all principles. Even if, at the beginning of a new life, you must relearn what you have already acquired in past lives, such as walking, speaking, eating, etc., it is apparent. In reality, what happens is that the being must remember, not relearn. The fact that a child eats, moves, cries, laughs, sees, hears, etc., is because these things are already in their subconscious, their talents, their genius. The lazy boy who does not want to study all the previous skills and finds them much easier than others who try them for the first time simply shows that he is bored having to repeat what he has already gone through in a previous life, or even in several previous lives. There is no need to worry about this. Leave it there for him to remember what he has stored in the subconscious. Generally, it happens that during exams, the young boy remembers what is necessary to pass quietly at the same level as all the others who studied hard throughout the year. This confuses parents and teachers, but it is one of the proofs in favor of the theory of reincarnation. Reincarnation exists, but it is not mandatory. Free will exists for everything and in everything. Just as on earth, each individual profits or wastes opportunities according to their character or desire. In the astral realm of souls or disembodied spirits, each is free to take advantage of this offered resource to progress or not, just as humans are free to choose a profession or field of study, to strive for their own development, or simply to live without purpose or ambition. Similarly, souls are free to return to the earthly plane to take a step forward or to acquire new experiences. Also to settle outstanding accounts called karma, or to reap deserved goods, or if they wish, they can remain in the life they lead for as long as they wish. No one forces them. However, in the end, the progress and well-being of others encourage them to desire the same for themselves, and the currency with which this is bought is effort, knowledge, and experience, acquired in active life on earth. Every knowledge and experience remains forever as acquisitions bought and paid for. We say that these acquisitions are made by right of conscience, and they cannot be lost or stolen. No one can take away your intelligence, talent, skills, and knowledge. What is even more extraordinary is that each acquisition is made through an experience, and this experience is accompanied by objects, instruments, movable goods, money, real estate, etc. Everything used in life, whether it be a bed, a table, cutlery, dishes, clothes, jewelry, money, etc., down to a matchbox, essentially remains recorded as negatives of archived photographs in our individual heritage by right of conscience. These properties or possessions accompany us in each reincarnation. They appear in our lives or not, and this is what causes some people to be born in opulence and others in misery. You are born where you have earned the right to be born by right of conscience. The law ensures that each is drawn to their sphere, to their own place. There is no injustice in the kingdom of truth. It is to this law that Master Jesus referred when he said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Matthew 6:19-21. Of course, like all biblical sayings, this one also has three levels of meaning. The first is material, the second is mental, and the third is spiritual. As you can see from everything that has been said, there is no reason to live in fear of thieves. If you have lived in fear that your property may be stolen, that thieves may break into your home at night, or that scammers may deceive you, etc., you can now live in peace. No one can take away a single object that belongs to you by right of conscience. If you possess it, it is because you earned it in past lives. If an attempt is made against you, either by your own fear that may persist until you have acquired the practice of the new consciousness, or someone steals from you, or you lose an object, immediately state the truth. Nothing that belongs to me by right of conscience can be lost or stolen. Stay calm, think no more about it, and you will see that you will recover your property. Someone will return it to you, someone will offer you a similar one, or you will find an identical one. Your entire heritage is in your memory, like the original of a document reproduced externally. It cannot be separated from you. You will not steal, you will not even try it. Do not blindly believe anything you have just read, verify it for yourself first. You will know them by their fruits. Chapter 9. You shall not bear false witness. Many people are amazed that Moses did not give a distinct place to lying among the 10 commandments, and think there should have been an 11th commandment saying, "You shall not lie." Then they are satisfied thinking that lying may be included in this 9th commandment. What happens is that lying has been included and dealt with in detail in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd commandments, as we will see later. And not only was lying not discredited by Moses as insignificant, this text is essentially a metaphysical exposition of truth and an indictment against appearance and false beliefs that humanity accumulates. Perhaps it is because of the absence of a specific provision in this code of conduct that human beings continue to lie at their convenience and caprice. Now they will know what they are doing. "You shall not bear false witness" refers directly to the spoken word. You will never be able to establish a lie, not only because the truth will cry out and denounce the lie, but also because the law will return the deception and destroy the one who tries to lift it. During elections, we see how parties try by all means to discredit each other by launching slander, false testimonies, and defamation. The winner enters into the exercise of power, convinced that they have defeated the other. In reality, what they have done is accumulate evidence of their own falsehood. By their fruits, you will recognize them. Or as Emerson said, "What you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." Also to settle outstanding accounts called karma, or to reap deserved goods, or if they wish, they can remain in the life they lead for as long as they wish. No one forces them. However, in the end, the progress and well-being of others encourage them to desire the same for themselves, and the currency with which this is bought is effort, knowledge, and experience, acquired in active life on earth. Every knowledge and experience remains forever as acquisitions, bought and paid for. We say that these acquisitions are made by right of conscience, and they cannot be lost or stolen. No one can take away your intelligence, talent, skills, and knowledge. What is even more extraordinary is that each acquisition is made through an experience, and this experience is accompanied by objects, instruments, movable goods, money, real estate, etc. Everything used in life, whether it be a bed, a table, cutlery, dishes, clothes, jewelry, money, etc., down to a matchbox, essentially remains recorded as negatives of archived photographs in our individual heritage by right of conscience. These properties or possessions accompany us in each reincarnation. They appear in our lives or not, and this is what causes some people to be born in opulence and others in misery. You are born where you have earned the right to be born by right of conscience. The law ensures that each is drawn to their sphere, to their own place. There is no injustice in the kingdom of truth. It is to this law that Master Jesus referred when he said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Matthew 6:19-21. Of course, like all biblical sayings, this one also has three levels of meaning. The first is material, the second is mental, and the third is spiritual. As you can see from everything that has been said, there is no reason to live in fear of thieves. If you have lived in fear that your property may be stolen, that thieves may break into your home at night, or that scammers may deceive you, etc., you can now live in peace. No one can take away a single object that belongs to you by right of conscience. If you possess it, it is because you earned it in past lives. If an attempt is made against you, either by your own fear that may persist until you have acquired the practice of the new consciousness, or someone steals from you, or you lose an object, immediately state the truth. Nothing that belongs to me by right of conscience can be lost or stolen. Stay calm, think no more about it, and you will see that you will recover your property. Someone will return it to you, someone will offer you a similar one, or you will find an identical one. Your entire heritage is in your memory, like the original of a document reproduced externally. It cannot be separated from you. You will not steal, you will not even try it. Do not blindly believe anything you have just read. Verify it for yourself first. You will know them by their fruits. Chapter 9. You shall not bear false witness. Many people are amazed that Moses did not give a distinct place to lying among the 10 commandments, and think there should have been an 11th commandment saying, "You shall not lie." Then they are satisfied thinking that lying may be included in this 9th commandment. What happens is that lying has been included and dealt with in detail in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd commandments, as we will see later. And not only was lying not discredited by Moses as insignificant, this text is essentially a metaphysical exposition of truth and an indictment against appearance and false beliefs that humanity accumulates. Perhaps it is because of the absence of a specific provision in this code of conduct that human beings continue to lie at their convenience and caprice. Now they will know what they are doing. "You shall not bear false witness" refers directly to the spoken word. You will never be able to establish a lie, not only because the truth will cry out and denounce the lie, but also because the law will return the deception and destroy the one who tries to lift it. During elections, we see how parties try by all means to discredit each other by launching slander, false testimonies, and defamation. The winner enters into the exercise of power convinced that they have defeated the other. In reality, what they have done is accumulate evidence of their own falsehood. By their fruits you will recognize them, or, as Emerson said, "What you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." What the commandment says is that your own concept is what you see. If you find what you see beautiful, it's because your gaze reflects cleanliness, purity, and truth within your soul. If you declare what you see as ugly, your words translate and denounce your own falsity. You shall not bear false witness. You cannot, even if you try. You are referring to yourself, not your neighbor. In the first part, you learned that the true self is perfect, beautiful, with all the virtues and beauties of its creator, for it was created from the very essence of the Father. You also learned that this self is the truth, my truth, your truth, and everyone's truth. If we manifest the opposite, it means that we do not yet know our own creative power, which is thought. What we think manifests outwardly, and by learning to think, we begin to correct the outward evidence. Our ignorance is not evidence that the Father did not know how to educate us. It is only evidence that we are still children in the house of this Father. Chapter 10. You shall not covet. When an idea emanates from the divine mind, it contains within itself everything necessary for its development. It is inconceivable that God could conceive and send us something incomplete for us to scratch our heads searching for a solution that He alone knows. This would resemble more of a riddle designed specifically to pass the time, but never the infinite wisdom, love, and justice, especially in the case of the evolution of a life that He Himself initiated. The universe is based on order, a perfect harmony among all its parts, which is evident by the simple fact that the sun and the earth rotate to receive all the benefits He bestows. Once you have acquired this knowledge, nothing is ever lacking again. If you have surplus, it is because another needs it. Nature abhors a vacuum. Even the air and space themselves are filled with atoms of all kinds, awaiting the opportunity to form something at the right moment. Life constantly seeks the opportunity to animate itself. That is its mission, and it does not let any favorable opportunity pass by. If you leave a bit of soil where it can receive moisture, soon a little green shoot will sprout. If you leave an unused glass of water, it will not be long before it is teeming with live larvae. Before a woman conceives a child, everything is prepared in her body to receive, protect, and nourish this new being until it is ready to become a complete human being. The egg of an insect, reptile, or bird already contains everything it needs to develop, a meticulously equipped creature to thrive in its appropriate environment. The same goes for plant seeds. So, if there is such a loving will, such providential tenderness, such meticulous attention to prepare and watch over the smallest details that one day will become a human being, it cannot lack anything. Everything is provided and already created, available to this being. You shall not covet, says the commandment, meaning you do not need to envy what someone else possesses, desire it, or resign yourself to it. The equivalent exists for you, and it already belongs to you. You do not even need to fight to obtain it. Just ask for it, claim it, and thank in advance to see it appear. Doesn't the Bible clearly say this? Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. And why not take it seriously? The size of a desire, or the intensity of your need, indicate the degree of effort that the gift exerts to enter your life, because it is a gift, and you do not have to pay for it. When you feel the need, it means it is already paid for or deserved. Its time has come, and your moment has come to receive it. So, you can ask for it, but above all, give thanks. It may come to you through natural earthly means or through a friend, or it may come to you as a miracle, as happened to me one day in Orleans, without knowing anyone. I had spent all my money waiting for a delayed transfer. There was not a cent left in my wallet, and it was a Saturday afternoon. The banks were closed until Monday. However, I knew the truth and proclaimed it. My world contains everything. Nothing is missing in creation. Thank you, Father, for you have already heard me. At that moment I saw a greenback fluttering down the street heading towards me. It stuck to my ankle, and looking down I realized it was a $5 bill. It had undoubtedly slipped away from someone. I waited with the bill in hand, in case someone would come looking for it. Miraculously, this money allowed me to pay for a taxi that took me to the bank on Monday, where my transfer awaited. Miracles do not happen because a principle has been violated, as churches naively believed, but precisely because the action of the principle is invoked. One studies it, knows it, applies it in accordance with its rules. A prince can never bow to make exceptions. My master used to say that if the principle of gravity were to stop for a moment, to prevent an important man from dying after falling from a tall building, it would not be a miracle, but universal chaos. Chapter 11. The First Commandment. The first 3 commandments are one. They all refer to the same thing, and they say this. 1. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. 2. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. 3. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. 4. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. The first thing to remember is that when the Bible repeats a point 3 times, it means it must be taken literally, not symbolically. Furthermore, this meaning applies across all 3 levels of consciousness: material, mental, and spiritual. In this commandment, the name of the Lord your God is mentioned 3 times. The first mention refers to the God who created everything, the second refers to the law or principle, and the third refers to the higher self within each of us, which is one with God, one with the principle. In other words, these 3 aspects represent a single entity and power. Egypt symbolizes the material of the primitive man, who has not yet reached the degree of power to understand or accept the concept of a single invisible God. The Egyptians worshipped many gods, formed and visible idols. Hermes took the first step to instill in them the idea of a single God. This initial effort served as a catalyst, but did not assert itself, and they returned to their usual beliefs. Moses came to give them a new impetus. That is why he says, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. In the terrestrial interpretation, for the material plane and for Moses' disciples in the Exodus, this meant they should worship only one God, who had liberated them from slavery in the houses of their Egyptian masters. This new God was called the Lord, and they should no longer serve their old idols. In the second sentence, he prohibits the forms of these idols, meaning he forbids worshipping images of animals, fish. In the third sentence, he speaks to them very clearly, forbidding them to worship and honor their painted dolls. He tells them that he will punish not only the disobedient, but also their children, grandchildren, and descendants, but that he will have mercy on those who obey him. This situation seemed so childish that future generations expressed their dissatisfaction with this obvious injustice, leading the prophet Ezekiel to clarify and revoke this measure. This shows how the human mind was developing and considering some of Moses' commands as childish. For us, the metaphysical meaning is already clear. I am God who extracted you from the material concept. Do not attribute powers to anything other than me, and do not form mental images. Do not fear them, do not respect them, and do not judge based on what you see outside, whether in heaven above, on earth below, or in the water beneath, because the law will deliver to you what your errors dictate. It will punish those who hate me and correct your manifestations, for with truth I show mercy to those who love me and keep my commandments. Over time, the Hebrews adopted a literal interpretation of the scriptures, to the extent that there is not even visual representation in their synagogues. They were overwhelmed by all the obligations listed in Leviticus, to the point that the Levites lived with a guilt complex, because it was humanly impossible for them to follow the 600 or so rituals and daily details to which they believed they were committed. The Bible is a psychological and metaphysical treatise. It is the book of truth. And this truth not only commands but also explains. It contains an explanation and advice for each circumstance of life, on all levels of consciousness. The fourth commandment, not to take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain, directly refers to what you already know. Do not condemn yourself with your words. Do not say that you are ugly, bad, negative. Do not claim detrimental conditions that then make mentality manifest, such as my bad memory, my sick heart, my lameness, my poor vision, etc. All this amounts to taking the name of the Lord your God in vain, and the Lord does not forgive. The Lord will not hold guiltless anyone who takes his name in vain. By using the name of the self, you will have given a command that the subconscious will do its best to execute in all your circumstances to the third and fourth generation. Chapter 12. You shall not commit adultery. In principle, this word was neither used nor written by Moses. What he said was, you shall not commit adultery. And it was the first adultery committed during the transcription of the 10 Commandments, that of arbitrarily altering the truth. Moses, being a visionary, a sage, and an expert in the knowledge of Hermetic principles, it was completely impossible for him to instruct by attempting to deceive the principle of generation. The word fornication constitutes an offense and an insult to human intelligence. It was placed where it was by scribes under the order of ignorant ecclesiastical authorities. The same substitution was crudely made in the writings of the Apostle and Evangelist Matthew, chapter 19, verses 4 to 12. But we will address that later. For any knower of principles, the biblical substitutions are glaring. Just like all principles, the principle of generation operates automatically on all planes and acts appropriately on each plane. In the atomic realm, an atom joins another to give birth to an element by the law of attraction, cohesion, and adhesion. These three conditions are natural to the principle of generation. In other words, they are integral parts of the principle. Nothing would have been created, nothing would be produced, nothing would be born, and nothing would evolve if it were possible to destroy the electronic principle of magnetism, i.e., the attraction between positive and negative. Adhesion and cohesion follow attraction. Adhesion is the self-determination of the atom, that is, free will, to accept or reject union with another atom, whether of its kind or not. The question is the ability to stick together with such force. It is unnecessary to remind you what happens when the particles of an atom are separated, the atomic bomb. I assume you have seen, in what you have just read, the similarity to what happens between us human beings. This similarity enlightens you perfectly on the principle of correspondence, for as above, so below, as below, so above. Studying the monad, one reaches the angel, as the Kybalion says. The principles act automatically above everything, and despite everything we may do against them. If atoms were human beings, or spoke in our words, they would call this process of attraction, adhesion, and cohesion adultery. The same goes in the botanical and zoological realms, where a bee transfers pollen from one flower to another, thus creating a new species. Now imagine if the Creator God intended to prevent or prohibit these processes. It is well known that if resistance is placed against a principle, it multiplies the force that drives it to seek another way out. In other words, it forces it to deviate, but it cannot be stopped. In the animal kingdom, the principle of generation is called sex. As long as humans continue to reproduce through the process called sexual, they prove that part of their system has not yet emerged from the animal kingdom. Once their cells evolve to the immediately higher kingdom, where the principle of generation manifests differently, man and woman can no longer act like animals. They are no longer in that kingdom, and they are no longer under the lower influence. They do not experience sexual desires or a desire to eat meat. It is another order of things. At this stage, disciples still ask the question, if we all evolve, will the human race become extinct? The answer is no, because there are always behind us thousands upon thousands of beings who must pass through the animal kingdom. You graduate, your generation graduates gradually, but others continue to arrive eternally. Jesus said, "The poor you will always have with you." He was referring not only to the economically poor, but also to the poor in knowledge, the poor in experiences, the poor in evolution. The book of Revelation also says that the Lord announced for this era that there would be no more births. This was announced for the human sector of his time, which is the same as that evolving today. This moment is already approaching. We know it thanks to the following signs and many others. The darkest hour precedes dawn. The dying improve just before dying. The sick deteriorate just before healing. The population of the earth increases everywhere extraordinarily and will soon begin to decline. One of Jesus' answers to his disciples regarding the end of the old world and the advent of the new world was when the veil of shame would fall. This means that when truth is universally recognized, the truth of the principles we learn, especially the truth they attempted to falsify with this false commandment, "You shall not commit adultery," by drawing human attention and imposing a prohibition or resistance simultaneously, they thwarted their goal, as we outlined earlier. The desire of the principle of generation multiplied, and seeking an escape went astray. Thus, we can see the terrible effects of violating this commandment, which caused a great deal of abuse, mental distortions, sexual aberrations, physical ailments, dishonor, shame, and punishments. All this because of the arbitrary substitution of a word. Chapter 12. You shall not commit adultery. In principle, this word was neither used nor written by Moses. What he said was, "You shall not commit adultery." And it was the first adultery committed during the transcription of the 10 Commandments, that of arbitrarily altering the truth. Moses, being a visionary, a sage, and an expert in the knowledge of hermetic principles, it was completely impossible for him to instruct by attempting to deceive the principle of generation. The word fornication constitutes an offense and an insult to human intelligence. It was placed where it was by scribes under the order of ignorant ecclesiastical authorities. The same substitution was crudely made in the writings of the Apostle and Evangelist Matthew, chapter 19, verses 4 to 12. But we will address that later. For any knower of principles, the biblical substitutions are glaring. Just like all principles, the principle of generation operates automatically on all planes and acts appropriately on each plane. In the atomic realm, an atom joins another to give birth to an element by the law of attraction, cohesion, and adhesion. These three conditions are natural to the principle of generation. In other words, they are integral parts of the principle. Nothing would have been created, nothing would be produced, nothing would be born, and nothing would evolve if it were possible to destroy the electronic principle of magnetism, i.e. the attraction between positive and negative. Adhesion and cohesion follow attraction. Adhesion is the self-determination of the atom, that is, free will, to accept or reject union with another atom, whether of its kind or not. The question is the ability to stick together with such force. It is unnecessary to remind you what happens when the particles of an atom are separated, the atomic bomb. I assume you have seen in what you have just read the similarity to what happens between us human beings. This similarity enlightens you perfectly on the principle of correspondence, for as above, so below. As below, so above. Studying the monad, one reaches the angel, as the Kybalion says. The principles act automatically above everything, and despite everything we may do against them. If atoms were human beings or spoke in our words, they would call this process of attraction, adhesion, and cohesion adultery. The same goes in the botanical and zoological realms, where a bee transfers pollen from one flower to another, thus creating a new species. Now imagine if the Creator God intended to prevent or prohibit these processes. It is well known that if resistance is placed against a principle, it multiplies the force that drives it to seek another way out. In other words, it forces it to deviate, but it cannot be stopped. In the animal kingdom, the principle of generation is called sex. As long as humans continue to reproduce through the process called sexual, they prove that part of their system has not yet emerged from the animal kingdom. Once their cells evolve to the immediately higher kingdom, where the principle of generation manifests differently, man and woman can no longer act like animals. They are no longer in that kingdom, and they are no longer under the lower influence. They do not experience sexual desires or a desire to eat meat. It is another order of things. At this stage, disciples still ask the question, if we all evolve, will the human race become extinct? The answer is no, because there are always behind us thousands upon thousands of beings who must pass through the animal kingdom. You graduate, your generation graduates gradually, but others continue to arrive eternally. Jesus said, "The poor you will always have with you." He was referring not only to the economically poor, but also to the poor in knowledge, the poor in experiences, the poor in evolution. The book of Revelation also says that the Lord announced for this era that there would be no more births. This was announced for the human sector of his time, which is the same as that evolving today. This moment is already approaching. We know it thanks to the following signs and many others. The darkest hour precedes dawn. The dying improve just before dying. The sick deteriorate just before healing. The population of the earth increases everywhere extraordinarily and will soon begin to decline. One of Jesus' answers to his disciples regarding the end of the old world and the advent of the new world was when the veil of shame would fall. This means that when truth is universally recognized, the truth of the principles we learn, especially the truth they attempted to falsify with this false commandment, "You shall not commit adultery." By drawing human attention and imposing a prohibition or resistance simultaneously, they thwarted their goal as we outlined earlier. The desire of the principle of generation multiplied, and seeking an escape went astray. Thus, we can see the terrible effects of violating this commandment, which caused a great deal of abuse, mental distortions, sexual aberrations, physical ailments, dishonor, shame, and punishments. All this because of the arbitrary substitution of a word. We have all seen those small, twisted Japanese dwarf trees deformed to an incredible degree. We consider them a curiosity and admire them as such. Nevertheless, they constitute an offense to nature, just like a caged bird or a tethered animal. We also know that prohibition arouses disproportionate attraction, as happened with all attempts to restrain the principle of generation, such as attributing a sexual meaning to Adam's apple, or adding elements to texts inspired by ignorance, by a desire for domination or power over others. The metaphysical meaning of the commandment, "You shall not commit adultery," is precisely, "Do not distort the laws, for you will not succeed." In other words, the effect will be contrary to what you desire, and the law itself will contradict what you have said. For Master Jesus, dogmatic fanaticism was even more repugnant and deserving of punishment than sexual debauchery, as he expressed by saying, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago, sitting in sackcloth and ashes." This means that religious fanatics would be punished more severely than prostitutes. Returning to the reference I made at the beginning of this chapter, Gospel according to Matthew chapter 19, verses 4 to 12, I will copy it in full. The Pharisees also came to him, tempting him and saying to him, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause?" He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.' So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another, commits adultery." The disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry." But he said to them, "Not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive this, receive it." If you are capable of understanding, you will have seen exposed the principle of generation up to the point where Moses was mentioned. The original explanation was undoubtedly longer and more detailed, as the disciples understood and commented by saying, "If such is the condition of a man with his wife, it is not necessary to marry." In other words, it is not necessary to marry if from the start they have been made one, meaning that when the positive and negative poles come together, no one can separate them. Each cell that emerges from the bosom of God is half positive and half negative, meaning that in human language and on the human plane, the primitive cell or original atom is both feminine and masculine. Shortly after their evolution, the two sexes separate and evolve independently until their final meeting at the end of the 14,000 years required to acquire spiritual consciousness. These two sexes are separate and independent entities destined to form a couple one day. However, there are those who do not wish to separate, those whom Jesus called eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. It is a great consolation for those who feel alone on the path of life or consider themselves unhappy and poorly married to know that at a certain level, incarnate or disembodied, it doesn't matter. He or she exists, the other perfect half of each, waiting to unite with their soulmate, and we have every right to claim that union. If our soulmate is disembodied, we will reunite on another plane. If he is embodied, nothing and no one can keep us separated. The law arranges everything harmoniously for everyone if we ask according to divine will, in grace and perfectly. And this other half of us is exactly what we are looking for and wish for, which suits us perfectly by perfect affinity. Many times in past lives we have met, we have united, and it is this memory that drives us to search. Doctrines falsely fabricated by humans have inserted a law that says, "What God has joined together, let no man separate." That's correct, but the interpretation is mistaken. It is believed to refer to marriage celebrated in a church with words spoken by an authorized religious figure. This is not the case, as we have seen. It refers to the original union of the primal couple symbolized by Adam and Eve. It is not a threat against divorce, which is simply a human solution, but a comfort offered by the infinite tenderness of our divine Father. To comfort us, saying, "Do not be afraid, my child, you have your love forever." Jesus lived consciously on a higher plane, which is why he taught through many parables, because the meaning of these parables does not vary. It is the same on all planes. The meaning of a parable is never subject to trendy or commonly used words. The reference to eunuchs is almost a parable. It can be interpreted in a human sense if desired, or in a scientific sense. It refers to neutrons that have no positive or negative charge. Metaphysically, those who make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven are human beings who, like all of you, aspire to ascend, to learn, and to study matters concerning higher planes. But as the Master said, "Let those who can understand it." Notice that the great masters avoid giving too many details when they speak of this commandment. They act as Jesus did, saying something critical, and those who can understand it, because the spirit of this fifth root race to which we belong is evolving between two planes. It largely has an animal nature, and an animal does not reason and does not know how to control itself. If given the green light, it overflows, and if shown the red light, it destroys itself. It's a very difficult balance point to maintain. Let us thank the Father for already having one foot lifted to ascend to the next floor, and let us remember the episode of Jesus when men brought a woman caught in the act of adultery, and according to the laws of Israel, she was to be stoned to death. The Master did not speak a word. He began to play with his finger in the earth at his feet, and the men who had brought her withdrew one by one. When they were alone, Jesus asked the woman, "Woman, where are they, your accusers?" She replied, "I do not know, Lord." Then Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go in peace,